This is Charlotte Talks. I'm Mike Collins on the local news roundup. 5, 28, 62, 75, 70. And the mega number was 5. That winning lottery ticket worth $1.5 billion was bought in South Carolina. After nearly 19 years, former Panther Rae Carruth leaves prison this past Monday with some apprehensions for his future. Electric scooters and their riders will just have to wait for the state to chime in on regulations. And Donald Trump will be in town this afternoon to stump for Mark Harris. Our roundtable of reporters is ready to detail those stories and others, and those reporters include Alex Olgan from WFAE News. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Joe Bruno joins us for the first time from Channel 9 Eyewitness News, where he is a city-county government reporter. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
We'll be nice to you today. Mary C. Curtis is a columnist for Roll Call and a contributor to WCCB-TV. Hello.
Good morning.
And Eric Spanberg is senior staff writer for the Charlotte Business Journal. Are you cold? You're rubbing your
I am a little, yes. I'm just anticipating the fun ahead.
Oh, it's going to get hot in here.
So we're all on the radio, but you can also watch us on Facebook Live. Let's start with something that didn't make the headlines, because I wrote the headlines before this happened yesterday, and we didn't see this coming. Margaret Spellings has announced that she will leave her job as president of the University of North Carolina System by early next year, which I think is about a year and a half, 2 years earlier than her contract would say.
Right.
Do we know why? What precipitated this?
We do not know why. One of the things that has been instantly speculated about is, of course, there have been a lot of changes to the board. So she may have been prompted by that. Of course, she has been at the university during a very interesting time, perhaps most notably with the Silent Sam controversy. So she has had, let's say, a very adventurous tenure. Also, she went through HB2, ruffled some feathers in terms of her response there. So the reason that I think was given was that she wanted to move back to Texas. So that's what we know so far.
Yeah, she came in with a bit of controversy, of course, because she was George W. Bush's education secretary, and also the former head of the system, Democrat, was kind of pushed out. So she did make some friends when she first came in, but as you said, there was a lot of controversy, and so...
Yeah, she was controversial when she came in because her predecessor Tom Ross, was a Democrat and was kind of ousted by the board, which was Republican, and they wanted a more conservative person at the head of and she used to be Secretary of Education under President Bush. And those suspicions about her bona fides, I think, were largely unrealized. I don't think people give her the credit that she's due in that case. In March of 2016, just a few weeks into her presidency, she was on this program, and I asked her about the criticism surrounding her appointment and what detractors should know about her.
They should know that I have spent many decades in public policy on the battlefield, putting myself in these positions to try to provide educational opportunity for everyone. All I'd ask is for people to give me a chance. I expect to have a much more in common with my detractors than I do different.
And she used her term to promote affordability, efficiency, accountability, and greater access to more low-income and rural students, calling education the new civil right. How successful was she with those goals?
I think she made some inroads. I mean, there were some things done with holding the line on tuition. Obviously, tuition is not, it's not 2 for 1 or anything. But I think she made sincere efforts in that regard. And I think it's also interesting, and I think we'll do this going forward, looking at her tenure in terms of navigating that divide a little bit. You know, she's brought in, as you said, with these, the legacy of being under George W. Bush, and there's this desire to have a more Republican-leaning head of the system, and yet she did a lot of things that you would not naturally assume to be of a conservative bent.
Yeah, she had, as you mentioned, HB2 situation problems. What was the problem with HB2? I don't remember.
She didn't she come out? I'm trying to remember. I think she either got out in front of the legislature or said that the university was not immediately going to adopt pieces of it. Now, someone correct me quickly if I'm wrong, but there was some schism between what was going on with HB2 and how the university policy was handled.
And the Silent Sam situation, evidently she was chastised by the board because she went directly
Yes.
to
To
the
the
governor
governor.
to
To the-
ask
yes.
his help, and they said you shouldn't do that
Right.
without coming to us
because they have their
first.
own commission what to do about monuments, and she went straight to them.
Plus,
Yes.
the board that hired her is no longer the board that is in existence. They've been reconstituted. There are different people on the board, and they've kind of splintered in their support for her. How does her departure reflect on the university?
Well, I think we need to know why. It's hard to say until we know if this was anything more than simply she was ready to go back to Texas, or she was frustrated with not being able to do things she wanted to do. Or
Because isn't that a common thing when people in prominent positions leave with no place to go, that they want to go home and spend more time with family or go home to Texas? That means she saw the writing on the wall or was
Wow.
asked to resign, because she's been negotiating her exit for evidently a while, according to news reports.
And there's a meeting
Right.
today, I believe, of the board leadership.
Yeah.
Or devil's advocate, maybe she just wanted to retire.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm hesitant, because you don't know. But yes,
Okay.
that is often the case. But we don't know for sure,
yes.
so we can't.
We
say
don't
for
want
sure.
to anticipate her
Correct.
motives. Let's
Correct.
say that.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure more will be revealed from that in the coming weeks. Rae Carruth, what am I saying? Rae Carruth, the former Carolina Panther, was 25 years old when he was found guilty of conspiring to kill his girlfriend, Terica Adams, in 2001. He was 44 on Monday when they released him from prison after serving almost 19 years. Now, the media was there, as you can hear, covering the moment that he walked out of prison, and if you listen carefully, you can hear the faint sound of applause from someone, we don't know who. WSOC TV spoke with Carruth by phone a few days before his release.
I'm excited just by being out of here. Nervous just about how I'll be received by the public. I still have to work. I have to live. I have to exist out there. And it just seems like there's so much hate and negativity towards me. I'm actually somewhat frightened. So I just, it's mixed emotions, but mainly I'm just worried about how I'll be received.
So, Joe, you're new here. Joe Bruner from Channel 9, which did that phone interview. Has he spoken to the media since he's been released?
No, he has not. I was in Clinton when he was released, and I can kind of set the stage for you. Clinton's a really tiny town. Everyone knew why we were there. It has 2 hotels. There's a Ruby Tuesday and maybe a Bojangles. That's about it. And we started camping out around 3:30, 4 o'clock as we awaited.
In the morning?
In the morning for Rae Carruth's release, because we were told any time between 8 and 5 p.m. that he would be up and out of there. And as the sun started to rise, prisoners started to wake up, and it was really interesting. All the prisoners would come toward the fence and look out at the media. It was kind of a show for the prisoners because there were so many outlets there from Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh. National outlets were there as well. And then when Rae Carruth was finally released, there were prisoners out in the yard watching him walk up to the gate and get into the white Tahoe and start on with his life.
That was a minimum security prison, correct?
Very minimum security, yes.
So was he there the entire 19 years? Or
No,
did
he
they
was
move him?
not. He was recently moved there, and I'm not sure how long. It hasn't been too long that he was at that facility. But when he got in that white Tahoe, it zipped out of the parking lot. The tires screeched as he departed the parking lot. There were reporters who were there to capture his departure, and it just zipped right by. I know one station actually followed him and tried to keep up with the vehicle. I believe that we learned that it was a family member who picked him up. And that station reported that the car was going about 90 miles per hour on these back roads of Sampson County, and of course they lost him.
Hopefully he wasn't driving, because if he'd gotten arrested, they'd put him back in.
Right.
In 1999, Terica Adams was shot 4 times by a hitman hired by Carruth. He wasn't charged with first-degree murder. Why? If he hired the guy,
Well, he was found not. He was
Found
charged.
not
He was
guilty.
found not guilty on that one count.
because he didn't pull the trigger?
Yes, and it apparently was a compromise with the jury, and that's been controversial because in many cases the person who guilty on the conspiracy charge, is charged in the same way because the actual shooter is still in prison.
Yeah. He had expressed a desire while in prison to be able to spend some time once he got out of prison with his son, Chancellor, who was still in his mother's womb at the time of the shooting and suffered brain damage as a result. He's being raised, Chancellor's being raised by his grandmother, and she said she's not ready to make that happen. Is he likely to press for the right to see his son now that he's out?
Pretty sure that he said he would not press for custody rights. I think he sort of reversed course on that.
I think he's hoping for a relationship, but he isn't going to pressure Sandra Adams into making that happen right away. I think he realizes now that he's going to have to work for it. He's missed a lot of time. Chancellor has grown up, and it's not going to be as simple as okay, let's get together now. He's really going to have to work if he wants to have a relationship with his son.
And there was a lot of outcry at the time when he first expressed that he wanted to have, as you said, custody or spend a lot of time, because people, of course, said this is the child that you were convicted of helping, be the mother killed, attempting to murder him. And and we've seen as a community, it's so interesting, how many years have gone by because they've checked in from time to time with the young man, Chancellor Adams, and we've seen him grow up and being raised by his grandmother, and I think the community feels they have a stake in it as well.
I thought it was really interesting, Joe, the interview that Erica Bryant did, hearing Rae Carruth's voice talking about how Chancellor Lee looks just like him. Yet another heartbreaking part of it. I mean, it's just such a sad, terrible story.
He has another, now 24-year-old son through another relationship who never visited him in prison but did talk to him, I believe, on the phone. What do we know about the future of that relationship?
No idea.
Has he ever admitted to murdering or taking part in the murder of Tarika Adams?
He has accepted responsibility.
Yes. And he says that it's probably right that he was sent to prison. But through his lawyer, there's another tale that he has spun about it was a drug deal gone bad. But he does accept responsibility.
And it was an incremental process, it seemed like, over the years for him to get to that point.
Absolutely. And when he talked to Erica Bryant in his brief interview, he kind of harped on Van Brett Watkins, the person who pulled the trigger, and said, Sandra Adams has forgiven him, but she still has this fractured relationship with me. And
so in that phone call, and Channel 9 tried to do it in person, I'm told.
Correct. The prison told us no, essentially.
So in that phone call with Erica at Channel 9, he says he's scared and nervous and worried about how he will be received now that he's out. Where will he be living?
Pennsylvania is what's
Why
been
Pennsylvania?
reported.
What's his tie to Pennsylvania?
We don't know. A lot of people speculate that it would be California. That's where he is originally from. But apparently he is going to Pennsylvania.
Okay. And he became, while he was in prison, a licensed barber. Do we know if he will try to pursue that outside of prison? Will he be allowed to? Is he technically a felon, or?
Well, he has to work.
Yeah. Yes.
So that was the term of his release. He has to work, and he does have 2 barber certificates, one from Central Carolina Community College that he received while he was in prison. So reading between the lines, it looks like that might be what he would try to pursue, but I do not believe we know if that's exactly what he'll do for his employment.
He has to do something, and those football years are far behind him.
Yeah, his money's long gone from legal bills.
Yes.
Also, as I was reading through this yesterday, he is now going by the name. Is he going to go by the name of Rae Carruth or Ray Wiggins? I saw that name being
Ray
used.
Wiggins is what he was known as in the prison system, and I'm not sure. I believe Wiggins might have been his father's last name. I'm not 100% sure on where Wiggins comes from, but that was how he was referred to in the prison system.
Well, I'm sure there'll be more to come on that story. Gosh knows we've been reading a lot about it in the Charlotte Observer over the last several weeks. Joe Bruno is with us from Channel 9, Alex Olgan from WFAE News, Mary C. Curtis from Roll Call and WCCB TV, and Eric Spanberg from the Business Journal. We're back with the Powerball in a moment at Charlotte Talks on WFAE. Support for Charlotte Talks comes from WFAE members and Capital Steps, the group that puts the mock in democracy, providing laughter therapy with their new musical satire show, Make America Grin Again, at McGlowan Theater on November 10th. Tickets at carolinatix.org, and Carolina Sinus Centers, dedicated to specialty ear, nose, and throat care at 5 locations, offering patients in-office options such as balloon sinus dilation. Info at carolinasinuscenters.com. There are 6 constitutional amendments on the midterm ballot. They focus on protecting everything from hunting and fishing rights to state income taxes. One provides additional rights for crime victims. Another mandates voter ID. But opponents say many of these are little more than a legislative power grab. Surveys say, in fact, that most voters are uninformed about the amendments, so we will explore them all Monday on this program at 9.
The hunt is on for whoever sent pipe bombs to some of the president's critics. CNN wrestles with reporting the news and being one of the bombers' targets. Also, the midterm campaigns hit the home stretch, the Red Sox round the bases, and Sandra Day O'Connor steps away from public life. The Friday News Roundup, next time on 1A.
The Roundup of the Week's news continues with 1A coming up at 10 here on listener-funded 90.7 WFAE, Charlotte's NPR news source.
It's Charlotte Talks and the local news roundup on listener-funded 90.7 WFAE and 90.3 WFHE. I'm Mike Collins. Before we move on to the Powerball lottery, which I believe nobody around this table won.
Or he wouldn't be here.
Oh, that's right.
But we also don't have to tell you.
Yeah, I love you that much, Mike. I came anyway.
But you wanted to clear something up about Margaret Spellings,
Yes,
Eric.
You asked about Margaret Spellings and HB2, and without taking you through the entire series of events, she said at one point that the university was truly caught in the middle and that it was causing serious problems for the university to recruit talent, teachers, and administrators. So that was a little bit of the schism. She did not defy HB2, but that was a little bit of a pushback on the law.
Okay. So the Powerball, $1.537 billion, I believe is what it's actually amounted to. Mega Millions jackpot, the largest in history, I believe, won by one person. No, we don't know that for a fact?
No, it's one person.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just saying this unbelievable.
Oh, I see.
One
Unbelievable.
person.
I see. Won by one
I
person.
thought Joe had just won.
who bought the ticket in Simpsonville, South Carolina.
So close.
At KC Mart number 7. No one's come forward yet, is that right?
But you don't have
Right?
to give your name in South
I
Carolina.
wouldn't come forward.
No.
I wouldn't either.
I wouldn't do it.
And NPR
No.
had this great interview with this lawyer earlier this week who represents lottery winners. And he talked about the legal battles that ensue sometimes when you split the winnings.
Of course, when you suddenly move from a 1,000 square foot home to this 100,000 foot mansion and drive 3 Maseratis, people are going to wonder where that money came from.
I got a promotion.
From what I understand, this food mart or gas station where the winning ticket was sold is like in the middle of the country, and it's not something that you like get off the highway and go to. So it's probably a really local billionaire in that town.
What? And have you? I'm sure everyone read or heard about how people are flocking now to buy tickets there because it might have it might be the magic spot.
Lightning doesn't strike twice, right?
Well, yes, it does, because the $1 million scratch-offs, I think, were also won someplace in South Carolina, weren't they?
Wow.
I think that was in the paper this morning that 22 people are splitting. They
right,
came in as an
yes.
office pool.
Oh, that's right.
$1 million
Okay, that
scratch-off.
does sound familiar now.
So we're
yeah.
going to have a road trip after the show down to South
Yes.
Carolina to buy
And
some lottery tickets?
Wherever.
And now, Mike, is it correct that the state receives $70 million of the big jackpot?
That's what I
Yes,
read.
it does. And the store owner gets $1 million. And my question is, does that come from the total pot, or is that
Oh,
just
that's a
an
good
extra
question.
little thing?
I love it when people go through the whole scenario of the lottery and say, "Yeah, but they kill you on taxes." Like, really? That's your problem, is that you're paying taxes on.
You're
what you
only
just
left
won?
with
Yeah.
$1 billion.
So they haven't. The winner has not yet come forward. They have a certain number of days.
6 months, I think.
Yeah, to do so. But perhaps they're not coming forward because they're heeding the words of South Carolina lottery head Tony Cooper.
Take a deep breath. Put that ticket in a secure location. Consult with a trusted advisor, a legal advisor, a trusted financial advisor. Take a few days. Take that deep breath again.
I think I once saw a Columbo where the lottery ticket was the reason.
Take that deep breath and then run to the laundry basket to make sure it's not in your jeans pocket.
I think I would just drive straight to the location and camp out.
Yeah, I can see, honey, it was that jacket I took to the dry cleaner.
That's right. So I'm being told by our producers that the store owner gets a mere $50,000. He still looked pretty excited.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
happy.
Prospect of-
He was
of
happy.
that. So both the $1.6 billion jackpot number and the choice, you can either take the whole lump sum, which amounts to, I think, $878 million in a lump sum, or be paid out in increasing amounts of money over 30 years. Of course,
Are you asking me to make a decision live
Yeah.
on air?
actually,
Oh, I didn't want anybody to know.
I've read about this. They say take the lump sum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be concerned about the guarantee of getting the money over 30 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Laws can change. I'd be nervous
Yeah.
about that.
I'd be nervous about maybe getting hit by a truck the next day.
Well, plus, I mean, if you don't spend it, if you take the 800, because you can live on less than $878 million.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So if you take most of that money after you buy your boat and your
Yes.
new house and your new car, you can take a trip around the world.
Yes.
You can take the other $877 million and put it in a secure banking situation.
Are you saying that the interest on that would be pretty
Yes,
good?
it would
Yeah.
be pretty damn good. Yes, it would.
I don't know. My son would be looking at me funny.
But even though even if you take all the taxes out of that, it's a significant sum of money. It would change a person's life, no question about it. But as you said, Alex, WFAE and NPR reported this week on studies that have been done on what has happened to previous lottery winners, and it isn't pretty. Why?
I mean, I can't say for all of them, but I think a lot of people come into a lot of money really quickly, and it's exciting.
They don't
and-
know what to do with
And don't know what to do with it. I mean, if you've never had that sum, it can be overwhelming, to say the least.
Because-
And I bet people are also calling you.
Because this one report
Oh,
said
yeah.
they usually end up saving. Now listen to this. They usually end up saving 16 cents on every dollar.
Ooh.
Where does the rest of it go?
Wow.
How can you spend that kind of money?
Wow. That's a lot of people opening restaurants and other businesses that
Yes.
they should not be doing.
Or there are a lot of really wild parties.
Well, and they also point out if you buy things like art, if you buy things that appreciate in value, then you haven't spent the money. You've just pushed
Yes.
it around.
Right,
And
right.
people don't know how to do that. They just buy depreciable assets like
Yeah.
cars. So the name of South Carolina's last big winner in the Powerball jackpot in 2013 has never been revealed.
That goes back to that neighborhood scenario you were going through, though. Oh, I see you have 5 cars now. And a helicopter.
And the mayor of Simpsonville, her name is Janice Curtis, whether or not the person ever comes forward and is known unto them, has said that everybody's happy for the winner.
Our entire community is absolutely thrilled for these people. So, yeah. We rally around you when you're having bad days, and we celebrate you when you're having great days.
So if the winner lives in Simpsonville, does the city chance stand to make some money on taxes?
Depends how big his or her property
Yes.
is.
The winner may be leaving Simpsonville.
Yes. Guess who's buying dinner for the next
How are you going to keep them down on the farm once they've seen $878 billion?
definitely, yeah.
All right, Donald Trump is coming back to town this afternoon for a rally at Bojangles Coliseum for North Carolina House District 9 candidate Mark Harris. Channel 9 discovered that there is a contract between Donald J. Trump for President, Inc., and the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority, in which his campaign will pay $23,000 in license and broadcast fees. Why are there broadcast fees? And they're also buying out all the parking at the Coliseum Ovens Auditorium with an option to purchase parking at the Park Expo. Is this what they've been doing around the country as Donald Trump has been campaigning for
That's
candidates?
a good question, but it was interesting to see how much the city would be making from this deal, and we found out about tens of thousands of dollars. The city gets to keep the concessions that they sell, all the profit from that. And I really thought it was interesting that, hey, the city will sell you these parking spaces at the Park Expo if you want to purchase more. But, it's a nice little chunk of change for the city of Charlotte, but it isn't an overwhelming number.
No, but as he goes around the country stumping for candidates, as most presidents do in the midterms, is this the normal way in which these things are handled? Does the presidential campaign pay for all of this, or do the local campaigns usually pay, or does anybody know?
Well, I think one thing, I don't know the answer to that, but I think one thing that's perhaps a little bit unique is that so many times Trump is in an arena rather than a town hall, or
right.
You have the logistical expenses of security and those kinds of things, but when you lease out an 8,300 seat arena, I guess the capacity would be 9,500 tonight without the ice on the floor, that's a little bit different, so that changes it.
So why would they be broadcast fees for this?
It's like a $3,000 flat fee. I'm not.
What does it pay
I'm not
for?
really sure what it pays for.
Allows you to
but
plug in your TV camera?
Yes, it was tucked into the contract though. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wondered if that was some kind of satellite link up, or I have no idea. I'm just
Well, the day after Donald Trump became president, or was inaugurated, he filed for re-election.
yes.
So the Donald Trump for President, Inc. campaign has been going all that time. Has the campaign been paying for all these rallies, even when there weren't other candidates involved? Has the government, and therefore the taxpayers?
Well, there are laws designed to ensure that not just Donald Trump, but any campaign is paying for its campaign events. And going back many, many years, there is always this.
But these rallies,
Right.
are they part of his reelection campaign?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This is an important race. This 9th congressional district race is an important race for both Republicans and Democrats, and it's really tight. It's a toss-up, although Dan McCready was in the lead for a good long time, and he's raised more money than Mark Harris. But the president coming to town has got to have an impact on your campaign. Do they think the president's presence here will tip the scales?
Well, obviously, having the president here, they want to make the race about him. It's interesting when he's been appearing.
Well, he said all the races are about
Yes,
him.
and it's been interesting because this is his oxygen. They're like campaign rallies for him. And when he goes around, it'll be interesting to see how much he mentions Mark Harris, because he generally mentions the candidate he's there stumping for in a few sentences, and then he goes into his, campaign rally mode. But it is an incredibly tight race, although it's in a Republican district. It's my district, actually. And we've seen these ads come in on both sides, a lot of outside money. You see now Hugh McCall has cut an ad for Dan McCready. And so, this is bringing in the big guns.
It's not just the presidential visit that Mark Harris is counting on here. I had a chance to talk to him and Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday, and Senator Graham said, if you're a Republican between the caravans and the Kavanaugh hearings, if you're not fired up to vote, you're probably legally dead.
Yeah, I heard that.
That was
Oh
his
my
quote,
gosh.
probably legally dead. So
Senator Graham always goes low-key and subtle.
Right.
Well, they're trying to make it about those issues, and Democrats want to talk about the tax cuts and health care and these other issues. The Republicans thought tax cuts were going to be a big issue for them. It's turned out not to be. So they have the visuals of these caravans, the announcement of Trump that they're going to send troops to the border, and they're trying to gin up also the feelings around the Kavanaugh race.
But when you look at the early voting numbers for Republicans in North Carolina, it looks like those issues are resonating.
Yes, there are.
So, around the country, Republicans have been talking about, because there was a montage of this on I forgot what I was watching last night, of Republicans, including the president, talking at rallies about how we're going to protect your access to health care if you have
Pre-existing conditions.
Which is
conditions.
just the opposite of what many of them.
So at the same time this is going on, there's a court case, I think, in Arizona or someplace out
Fourth
west.
District, Texas. Yeah.
Okay, where they're trying to repeal Obamacare, which would get rid of protections for pre-existing conditions.
Irony?
Are they going to talk about that here? Has that come up in this 9th congressional district race?
I don't think in great detail that I'm aware
It's been
of.
Well, you
more
see it
Social
in the-
Security has been a
And
big
Medicare.
issue.
You see it in
And
the
Medicare,
ads.
yes.
In the ads, you do see it.
I'm really curious to. I mean, we've seen what's happened in the last 2 weeks, particularly with the president's thrown out this idea of a middle class tax cut, which is, I guess, entirely fictional and impossible at this point.
Well, the Congress isn't in session.
Right.
so-
That's what I'm saying.
And they've never heard a
Fictional.
word about it until he said it.
Fictional, and also all but impossible because there's no willingness to do it when they come back. And then, of course, the pre-existing conditions. And then you have the whole issue of how he has talked about the media, given the context or the backdrop of what's going on with the explosive packages. So anyway, I'm just curious to see what he says, if the message changes at all when he's in North Carolina this evening.
So the last time the president... I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted kind of transitioning to that. Senator Graham and Mark Harris acknowledged that because of all the pipe bombs being discovered across the country, that the president's rhetoric might be a little toned down for his rally tonight. And Mark Harris said, I think we all should be reevaluating how we speak and what we're saying.
And we'll get to that. The last time the president came to town was also on a Friday, and they blocked off, obviously, thoroughfares throughout the city so he could get to and from the event. Tonight's event starts at 7 p.m. We never know what route the president will take. Doesn't matter who the president is. The Secret Service does not release this information for obvious reasons, but you can count on Billy Graham, I-85, 74, and Wilkinson Boulevard and Independence Boulevard being impacted by this at 7 o'clock. And they don't just close it. The event starts at 7.
Right.
So when can we anticipate rush hour being completely screwed up?
Well, they open the doors, is it at 3 or 4, Joe?
Laura White with CRVA said 3.
So 3 o'clock. So the mess begins then, and then it goes until it's over.
But then they actually close highways for the presidential limousine.
Essentially, Mike, if people are listening live right now, just run out of your office now.
Just leave.
Your
don't
day's
even
over.
go to work.
Yeah, don't even worry about your boss.
There are already people, though, now camping out there, which is fascinating in this rainy weather.
Wow.
The president lands at 6:10, so you can kind of get a good idea of that there. But we also got a Hornets game tonight.
And,
that's the perfect storm, and it's raining.
And then they also don't let you leave until he's clear.
Right.
So that's...
And they close those roads well in advance of his using them. Okay, this week bombs were, and we've already talked about this a little bit, bombs were delivered to people who have been openly critical of the president, liberal philanthropist George Soros, Bill and Hillary Clinton, the Obamas, Eric Holder, former Vice President Joe Biden, Robert De Niro, and this morning in Florida, Cory Booker, a packaged address to Cory Booker was attempted to be delivered, or it showed up at a post office. I'm not sure which. That makes 11 bombs. President Trump spoke about this at his rally in Wisconsin on Wednesday night.
We want all sides to come together in peace and harmony. We can do it. We can do it. And by the way, do you see how nice I'm behaving tonight? This is like, have you ever seen this? We're all behaving very well. And hopefully we can keep it that way, right?
I don't even know what to say about that, so I'm not going to say anything. Donald Trump quickly pointed a finger, though, at his opponents and at the news media. He took absolutely no responsibility for this himself, instead telling the media it is their responsibility to set the national political tone and to, quote, stop the endless hostility and constant negative and oftentimes false attacks and stories. Who would like to respond to that?
Well, I mean, let's just start with, I'm going to start with a real quick part, which is the obvious part, that he's only, 2 days removed from a couple days removed from congratulating the Montana congressman who body slammed the reporter from The Guardian. So it's a little...
Congratulated him. Yes,
and congratulated him. So
he had admitted to a crime, actually, this congressman.
So just given that alone, it's hard to really take those comments at face value.
Is this a situation where he is spreading false news of his own, or does he simply live, and I don't mean this facetiously, does he simply live in an alternative reality?
Well, a lot of folks do, because immediately people in mainstream publications and broadcast avenues were saying that they thought it was the Democrats who had done this. And you see these things, that are already blaming media, other people who want to make Republicans look bad. You see the equivalency of people talking about it when it's the president who is the leader.
We'll have a little more to say about that, then we'll get into early voting and scooter rules, among other things. That sounds like cider house rules. It's Charlotte Talks on WFAE. Support for Charlotte Talks comes from WFAE members and Heartwood Tree Service. Heartwood Tree Service provides education and research-based care to help urban trees survive storms and thrive in a challenging climate. Contact information at heartwoodtree.com. Untitled.com. And Capital Bank, a bank that is committed to helping clients capitalize on every opportunity. Private Client Services from Capital Bank strives to provide solutions for unique financial needs. CapitalBank-US.com/CharlotteVIP. Well, the roundup of the week's news continues with the Friday News Roundup from 1A. Joshua Johnson and his panel of journalists will talk about the series of pipe bombs delivered to political figures and others this week, the upcoming midterm elections, and Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman on the Supreme Court, on her announcement that she will retire from public life because of a dementia diagnosis. That's coming up in 20 minutes, and we will continue our conversation about the week's news in this region in 30 seconds. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Joni Deutsch, host of the Amplifier podcast, inviting you to WFAE's Amplifier Record Sale on Saturday, November 10th from noon until 4 p.m. at Lunchbox Records. We'll have a selection of CDs and LPs from WFAE's collection available for purchase, as well as food trucks, refreshments, and live performances from musicians featured on the Amplifier podcast. The event is free. You can RSVP and learn more at WFAE.org.
It's Charlotte Talks on WFAE and WFHE. I'm Mike Collins, the local news roundup starring Joe Bruno from Channel 9 Eyewitness News, who is still with us. He hasn't left, so obviously we haven't discouraged him at all on his first appearance. Alex Olgan from WFAE News is here. Mary C. Curtis from Roll Call and WCCB TV and others. And Eric Spadberg from the Charlotte Business Journal. I'll get back to the President Trump piece about his calling the media to task for the anger that has precipitated these bombs to be delivered, or what we think are bombs, because I'm not sure. Some of the reports that I've read indicate that perhaps the government experts think that these bombs were meant to scare people and probably could not have gone off. Nonetheless, that is terrorism. And you wrote a piece in Roll Call, Mary, about governments and the media and about the president and the press. This is the president has called the media an enemy of the people. What does he expect his ardent followers to do?
He's called them the enemy of the people, and you see this happening all over the world. Of course, obviously the president had nothing to do with the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, but and you had a show on this last week, but you just see how they're being... I'm sorry. Did I say last week?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The days are long.
It seems so long ago.
A lot happens in 24
hours. A lot
hours.
happens. I know the news cycle, it just keeps going. And you see this happening. And, words do have consequences. Also, he's the president of all the people. And you can't imagine this happening with any other president. And then for the first thing they would do would be to reach out to the former presidents and all the folks. We have a former attorney general, and basically see if they're okay and deliver that we're all in it together and we're a unified country. And this didn't happen. And some of these folks, like Maxine Waters, I don't think you mentioned, the congresswoman who received
She got
one
too.
of them. And yes, and he goes after her with so much vitriol. So many women, so many people of color that he goes after that are on this list, obviously. And this, is a time where those moments when you're the president, when something happens and it's your job to bring the whole country together, that's part of the job description. This particular president lives on having enemies, whether it's the media or opponents, and he's made it clear, I think, that he does not act as president of all the people. He's really a base president. And that's his strategy. That's how he won, and that's how he governs.
And maybe it's working because early voting is underway, and evidently turnout's been heavy. And I'm curious about how heavy, and can we tell the makeup of early voting? Who's coming out more frequently and in larger numbers, Republicans or Democrats?
Well, I know it's many more Republicans than in the past. Democrats generally have a higher early voting numbers, but one of the people that's frequently on this program, political scientist Michael Bitzer, said that Republicans have been coming out in high numbers.
Yeah, I think that the levels are comparable to 2016, which is unusual because that's a presidential year. Obviously, people vote a lot more in presidential years. So that means it's higher than 2014, our last midterm. There are all kinds of caveats that come with this, Mike, because you have a different number of polling places open. I think it's down by about 20% statewide. You have different hours, so on and so forth. But generally speaking, the numbers are up both for Democrats and Republicans, but they're up by a much larger margin for Republicans so far.
Of course, Democrats are coming out in large part, we are told at least, as a vote against President Trump. Republicans are coming out because of caravans and Kavanaugh and President Trump. President Trump has been urging his followers to get out the vote because this vote is a vote for him, he has said. It's the referendum about me, he says. And maybe he's right. I mean, he's not on the ballot. But in his absence, there are no Senate races, at least in North Carolina. Are there other races other than the 9th Congressional District race that have people excited about coming out? Is it about him?
Well, there are other races. I mean, obviously, there's the race with.
People are not coming out to vote for the affordable housing bonds.
Well,
I mean, they may vote for them, but that's not driving them to the polls.
Are we talking Charlotte or are we talking statewide?
Well, statewide,
yeah.
Sure.
I mean, you have the Ted Budd, Kathy Manning race is close. I mean, you have some interesting races, but I do think it is a very clever it's a very good tactic for a president, particularly a base president, to come out and say, make it about me. Otherwise, typically what happens in midterms is, enthusiasm, particularly for the party in power, kind of lags and people become complacent. So that's a way of trying to rally the troops.
What's interesting, though, is he says this vote is about me, but also he says if I lose the House, it's not on me. It's not my responsibility.
That's classic Trump, isn't it?
Right, yeah, exactly.
And it's thought that perhaps in some of the House races that this might hurt in suburban districts where maybe some suburban educated white women who voted Republican might be turning against some of his harsher attacks. So, we'll see. And also in North Carolina, we have those amendments. So we've had a lot of ads about those as well. And one particular one that's getting a lot of play, of course, is the one on a voter ID bill, which, of course, North Carolina voting bills have been thrown out before in the courts for discriminating against minorities, and we see it coming back. And we have this issue of voting rights and voter suppression, which is being felt all over the country.
You wrote an article about this, and you brought up, of course, the Georgia situation where the gubernatorial candidate on the Republican side, Brian Kemp, is also the Secretary of State, and he runs. He's in charge of the elections, and he tried to he put in place a rule that said your identification, the name on your identification and your address, etc., has to match exactly. Comma
to the hyphen.
What we have on record, and that was struck down by courts, I think, 2 days ago.
Well, they're holding 53,000 votes. It said registrations pending because of this. Also, they have a rule with absentee voting, absentee ballots, that if any random election worker is looking at it and thinks that your signatures don't look the same, they can throw it out. Mm-hmm. And you might not find out until after the elections. And it seems like in a majority black county, they were throwing out quite a bit of them. So they did take it to court. The judge said, you have to stop doing that. Kemp is back in court saying you can't say that this close to an election. So they're still litigating this. And so many people said he should have recused.
And there's a situation out west, and I've forgotten what state it's in, but the state passed a law, a Republican-controlled legislature passed a law that everybody had to have a street address.
Yeah, North Dakota.
North Dakota, right.
And people who live on Indian reservations do not have street addresses.
Yes,
so,
and that's a really crucial race because, of course, Heidi Heitkamp is running for Senate in a state, she's a Democrat, that Trump won, and she also voted against Kavanaugh. So she's down in the polls, and people think this is really trying to disenfranchise Native Americans.
So 431,000 people voted after 5 days in early voting. It's more like a presidential election in terms of turnout. Nearly twice as many unaffiliated voters have cast their votes early so far compared to 2 years ago. Are they the ones who are going to decide this election? Because the partisans have already decided.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about unaffiliated voters is that they're really not unaffiliated typically. No. They tend to vote with one party or another, but they just don't want to be associated directly with that party. And so that is where things are decided over and over again, especially in North Carolina where, and much like Charlotte, you have a large advantage in terms of the number of registered Democrats compared to Republicans, but then those unaffiliated voters are where a lot of these things are being settled.
And unaffiliated voters registrations have been growing nationwide.
Yeah. And a lot of younger people who have discussed for both parties, it seems, just want to put down as unaffiliated.
Okay, so there's been this pilot program in the city of Charlotte dealing with dockless bicycles and e-scooters, and this week City Council punted on writing regulations for the scooters. Other cities, like Raleigh,
Put on the brakes.
Thank you.
Oh, no, this early in the morning, Aaron?
I mixed my metaphors. Other cities, including Raleigh, are working to develop regulations, but City Attorney Bob Hageman says the legislature will also be working on rules, so it's in our best interest to wait because he knows that one of the scooter companies has already started to talk to legislators for some kind of statewide treatment of scooters.
We're just as likely to provoke something negative from the legislature, pushing back against that as opposed to positive. We know there's going to be legislation rather than us trying to figure out what's our permanent solution, which may or may not square with comes out of the legislature. We think we should have a seat at that table, keep doing what we've been doing for a couple more months.
I'm surprised by that, Mike, because the track record of Charlotte and Mecklenburg government and the General Assembly has been so strong over the years. But
I have two words for you. Dillon rule. Does the legislature really have an interest in this? Do they care? Do they see these things like cars?
Well, I mean, they took on, what was it, Segways, I think. And then you also had, remember the ride share? We had kind of a similar thing bubbling up with Uber and Lyft, and then eventually the state took care of it.
He mentioned...
they passed legislation, I should say.
He mentioned putting the brakes on. I'm going to use your metaphor here with this because the legislature is going to do this anyway, and the city of Charlotte wants a seat at the table. Are they likely to get a seat at that table, or at the kiddie table?
You know why I think actually they might, because it's going to be the cities. So it's going to be Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, and Asheville, Greens. That's where the scooter mania is. It's not in rural North Carolina. So, I think the cities will. This is mostly non-controversial, I think. I'm just trying to come up with sort of what's the nasty political fight here. I mean, there's always the possibility of one, but I don't see one just right off the top of my head.
I don't think it's controversial.
Yeah, some cities have said we don't want these scooters. So, I mean, I guess there's that rare chance the state could say we don't want them here. But the city of Charlotte's head over heels for these things. Yeah. They love them because they see them as a way that you can take care of that ride after you get off of a bus or you get off the light rail so you could travel that short distance. Yep. Something interesting we learned is I guess CMPD has dealt with 23 or so different incidents involving these scooters. Some of them have had serious injuries. Luckily, though, and thankfully, there hasn't been any deaths as a result of these things. But CMPD is also looking at the rules around them because they say you can get a DUI on a scooter.
Really?
And yes, and nobody has been arrested for a DUI on a scooter, but if you leave a bar or a club or a restaurant at night, you'll see people get on these scooters and get off on their way.
Well, the city of Charlotte on Monday night did decide to lay some cash out for a marketing and education campaign to give citizens the ABCs of scooter riding. If the state gets involved, will there have to be a DEF of scooter riding added to that?
Well, I thought it was funny that Julie Eiselt, the mayor pro tem, said in that committee meeting, like, who's going to go to a website to figure out the rules, which I think was probably a good point.
If it's anything like the terms and conditions that you have to agree to before you use your iPhone, no one's reading them.
That's right. Agree. Of course, you'll have to figure out which bathroom the scooters can use.
No.
If it goes to the state. All right. The city also wants us to slow down. They keep getting requests, evidently, for stop signs and speed humps in neighborhoods, and they are investigating ways to fulfill those requests. One thing that they've talked about is reducing neighborhood speed limits to 25 miles per hour. I thought that's what they were now once you get into neighborhoods.
It's 35 on some streets, but the city can go and reduce that speed limit to 25 miles per hour. They have all these statistics that show if you're hit by a car at 25 miles per hour, you are 9 out of 10 times going to survive, but if you're hit at 35, it goes down. Then if you're hit at 45 miles per hour, of course, the odds are very slim.
It's like 10% or something.
Yeah, not to mention if you're speeding already, at least lowering the speed limit, hopefully you'll speed at a lower speed.
Okay.
This is something that neighborhoods, one of their top requests to city council members for a lower speed limit, for speed bumps, for four-way stop signs. So now the city's really looking at fulfilling those requests and reducing the number of traffic fatalities.
I think right now, don't you have to petition to get to the 25? And so this would be
but a lot
quicker.
A lot of neighborhoods in Southeast Charlotte where I live, they have them. So it's interesting. You go from 35 to 25 to 30, and then there's a speed, sort of a turnaround in Selwyn Richmond and all of these things.
Yes.
But, so it really is confusing.
What's interesting is, too, the concern from people who are against this is that they feel like CMPD is now this is just a way for CMPD to make money from tickets because they're reducing the speed limit. But CMPD, police have not been involved in this. This is purely a city thing. This is all part of their Vision Zero plan. It isn't that police are looking for ways to ticket more drivers.
Not only that, we've had an alarming number. I mean, one would be an alarming number, but we've had a lot of pedestrian injuries and deaths in recent years.
But mostly downtown.
I don't know the answer.
I think
that.
that's true.
Is it? Okay.
Or in the surrounding.
Yeah. In the surrounding area, just around the downtown loop. Okay. And Vision Zero, to go back to what Joe talked about, that's the plan that they have for reducing traffic injuries and fatalities involving cars and pedestrians to zero by 2030. It's a worldwide plan. The way you do that is take the cars off the street, and everybody walks.
Or take scooters.
Scooters. That's it. Yeah.
It's hard to see people actually going 35, though. That's true.
Yes.
Too. Yeah.
Okay, City Council also voted unanimously on Monday night to spend $250,000 to study 70 acres of the Eastland Mall site with developer Crossland Southeast and Eastland Community Development, which will spend an additional $250,000 on this. Haven't they studied Eastland Mall to a fare thee well?
I don't think so, Mike.
Really?
I don't think this has ever been broached before. I think this is a fresh topic. Breaking. This has been going on for 6 years. So, it's taken a little while. This time it's different. Well, this time they think it's different because they have these developers. They feel like it's a credible plan. Yeah. And they have 7 to 9 months to come up with something that the council can vote on. And what I mean by vote on, what are the terms? What is the city going to spend? What is the developer going to spend? And when is all this going to be built? So we're finally getting close to having an answer, I think.
Well, City Councilman James Mitchell said that the one good thing has come out of this, that this is something that will finally bring this to fruition, essentially.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you for believing this council is going to do the right thing. This vote tonight is to say we stand with you. We stand beside you.
Okay. Now, I want to mention one thing here, and that is that we're losing another landmark very quickly here on November the 4th or soon thereafter. The venerable Pease Auditorium on the campus of CPCC will meet the Wrecking Ball after their final show, which opens tonight, closes on November the 4th. The Music of the Night with Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's a review. And this is a show that has given a lot of young people their starts in professional show business. I'm not kidding about this, because for years it was the site of the CPCC Summer Theater, and that was around at a time when summer stock was big and when there was nothing else to do in the summertime in Charlotte. So a lot of people have been through that auditorium, which will be meeting the Wrecking Ball in November. Just rest in peace.
Oh, you were writing the whole show for that.
Alex Olgan, Joe Bruno, Mary C. Curtis, Eric Spanberg. Thank you all for the hour.
Charlotte